You're listening to the Save the Date podcast, where we talk all things weddings, jewellery and romance. With love from Cullen Jewellery.
Hello and welcome back to the Save the Date podcast. I'm Sheridan.
And I'm Juliette, and we are so happy you're here.
Today, we're going to talk all about managing burnout during the wedding planning process.
So sit back, relax, and let's get straight into the episode.
So when it comes to wedding planning and weddings, I guess they're very glamourised, and this sort of uglier side is not spoken about all that much, especially when it comes to your mental health and kind of looking after yourself in the process. We talk a lot about making sure you're in your budget and kind of having everything aligned in that way, but definitely burnout is something that is glossed over quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And you might not think that you'll get burnt out wedding planning, but we very often say that wedding planning is like having a full-time job.
Yes.
And if you already have a full-time job, then you're having two.
Yep.
So it can get a lot. There's so many moving parts and so many things to juggle. So it's really important to kind of figure out your own way on how to balance all of the different things that you need. And I think this is probably one of the biggest reasons why people get wedding planners as well, because if wedding planning is like a full-time job, wedding planners, it is their full-time job. So at least they have the time to fully kind of dedicate to it.
Yes, and just take that little bit of extra stress off your shoulders. And this is the stuff that can be really hard to get to when, you've got other priorities in your life, which everyone would, no matter when their wedding is, there's always going to be other stuff going on. So that can be a really big one to help prevent burnout.
Yes. So let's get into some tips on how to manage the wedding planning process and avoid burnout.
Alrighty, I think the number one thing from the very start is to always kind of sit down and figure out what is most important to you and what needs to also be done. And I guess potentially delegating all of what needs to be done and figuring out, are there elements that you definitely want to do yourself, or is there stuff that you're happy, to get a wedding planner to help you out with? Kind of let that be your starting point.
Yep. And I think also you've got to kind of figure out what actually needs to be done early and what can potentially kind of wait a little bit. So for example, booking in your venue, you kind of know that needs to be done within the first couple of months of you planning your wedding, because kind of everything else is going to be booked around that venue and your date and things like that. Whereas the smaller little details, whether it's like little decorations or potentially even like your hair and makeup that aren't necessarily needed to be done, 12 months in advance or 18 months in advance, you can kind of work out when you need to book those in and spread them out as well.
Yeah.
So it's not everything needs to be booked in this 1 week. You can, spread it out over a few months.
Yeah. And I think that also really helps with not getting overwhelmed too early on as well. Like if you're trying to kind of put your focus on 20 different things, that's when you can very easily get overwhelmed, and then it's like you're stressing, and then it's already leading to burnout really early on. But if you can just kind of lay everything out on the table, don't even just make a note of everything that needs to be done, and then space it all out like you were saying, and you can just tackle one thing at a time instead of 10 different things at the same time.
So that really nicely leads us into our next point, which is to have a planning strategy and to keep things organized. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can do this, but the one that I have seen recently and I really like is basically you get this like big board, and then you put sticky notes on with all of the different tasks that you need. So you'll have like venue, hair and makeup, literally everything that you need to book in for your wedding, need to buy, you'll put onto this board with a sticky note. And then as you book them and they are done, you can take it off, and then you can visually see what is still kind of needing to be done and also what's already done, because once it's done, you can kind of forget about it and feel like you still have so much and not really know what you've got to show for what you've done so far. But at least with that, you kind of have then all the stuff that you have ticked off already.
Yes, yeah. And these sorts of things as well you can arrange them in some sort of like calendar form as well. So like, the absolute latest I need to book a certain thing is this date. And you can just have like maybe, I don't know, 2 pointers. So it's like you can start thinking about it at this time, but absolute latest, you don't want to leave it till any time past this date.
Yeah, or even like if you're not even necessarily want to do dates, but you could just have, if you're starting your wedding planning 18 months in advance, then you have a 18 to 14 month kind of column.
Block. Yes.
And then 14 to 12 month block, and put everything kind of in there so you can still see kind of on a larger scale what needs to be done. And if something gets ticked off early, then there's obviously nothing wrong with that. But yeah, you know that it needs to be done in that time block.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another thing that is really important is to try and keep everything wedding planning related in one place. So you tend to get, especially with your vendors, like a lot of contracts and just lots of bits and pieces. So if you can have a wedding folder, I know are very popular, for you to just have absolutely everything in, including your timeline, even if it's like your wedding colors, your theme, all of that sort of thing, all just in one place.
Yeah. And I feel like that always just really helps for that kind of, not mental clarity, but like just having everything there so you don't have to worry about like if something goes missing, or if you're planning something in the moment, or you're about to book something and you're like, oh, actually I just want to quickly reference the quote they gave me 2 months ago, but I can't find it. It's like little things like that. It can really help in the long term to make sure you're really staying on top of putting everything together.
Yeah. And also like some vendors, or especially later on in the process, they might ask you for certain things that you've booked previously, whether it's like your venue now wants to have all of the contact details of all of the vendors that are going to be coming on the day, or they want copies of whatever it is, your timeline or your theme, things like that, that at least then it's all in one place and easy to access. The next thing that is obviously very important to avoid burnout, but also just in general, I guess, is to look after both your physical and your mental health. This can kind of be one of the biggest things that will actually help you be able to get through wedding planning way better, is if you have a really good routine that looks after especially your mental health, I think as well. But it kind of goes under the radar a little bit how important physical health is. And I want to be really clear when I'm saying this, that I'm not saying this means you need to go to the gym and do a wedge shred, which is kind of very, I guess, popular, that people will want to lose weight for their wedding. Absolutely not. You do not need to change your appearance, and that's not what I'm saying. But being just more active will help your mental health. So even if that is just going for a 10-minute walk a day around the block with your dog or with your partner, just kind of getting out in the fresh air and moving your body a little bit.
And I feel like that also really helps with your mental clarity around everything. And like when you are getting a little bit stressed, it's really good to just have a break, step away from it. Yeah, go on a walk or do something, whatever it is, and then come back to it and you're like, oh, okay, this is a lot more achievable, what I'm trying to do right now.
Yeah, because I know whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'll go for a walk, and whether I put, music on in my headphones or an audiobook or a podcast, or even just walk with nothing, was it Hot Girl Walks that were like you go on a walk, you don't listen to anything, you just like tell yourself positive affirmations for the whole hour. Like do that. Because it'll just help switch your mentality a little bit, like you were saying, and help to kind of take you away from it to be able to go back with a much clearer mindset.
Yeah. And I feel like in general as well, just on this topic, I feel like it's one of those things that if you let little things like this slip, and you're like, if maybe you go a couple of weeks and you're like, oh yeah, I'm fine, like I don't need to worry about any of like mental health or physical health or anything, and then it like hits you all at once. So I feel like it's just in general a good practice throughout the entire, I mean, in general, with just general life as well, but in particular when you're planning a wedding, just making sure you actually make this a routine rather than just, I guess, using these tips when you're actually already feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like this will also help to prevent it, like, so you don't get overwhelmed at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably still will at some point, but having those healthy habits from word go and keeping those up.
Well, because that's the thing as well, is that yes, burnout is like very common, but it's an overwhelming experience planning your wedding regardless, even if you don't actually get burnt out. So doing these things will help you combat that overwhelm and feel better about it and hopefully kind of move through it a little bit easier. So definitely do all of those things for your physical health. Take breaks when you need to. I think we've mentioned this in a couple of podcasts before as well, but if you're feeling so overwhelmed with wedding planning, take a couple of days break and just don't look at it for a couple of days and then go back, because chances are if you're going into it so overwhelmed and you've just, a bit scattered, you're not going to be happy with like what you're planning at that time. Yeah. And you'll probably end up wanting to change it 50 million times.
And it'll take the enjoyment away from it, and it should be a really enjoyable experience for you.
So 3 more big tips when it comes to your physical health is please eat proper meals. It's so easy, I think, just in general, to kind of fall into a habit of, not eating breakfast because you wake up late and you just want to have a coffee before you go to work, or not eating lunch because you've forgotten and you're too busy doing things, and then, dinner rolls around and you've had a big day at work and all you want to do is get takeout. And there's nothing wrong with, getting takeout if you want to, but just try and make sure that you are eating enough food, because not eating enough food is also going to be a big strain on your body and then cause more stress kind of down the line as well.
And drink water.
And drink, yes, please drink enough water.
Drink water.
I don't think anyone ever drinks enough water, but
drink water.
And then make sure you get enough sleep as well. Yes. This is another one that can be really hard, especially working a full-time job if you're then going home at night and doing, all of your ticking off your tasks at night. But try and, I know bedtimes are like a thing that we kind of say for kids, but have a bedtime and switch off.
Yes, and with that as well, whatever your bedtime is, stop at least 40 minutes before. So you have a chance, your body has a chance to wind down, so you're not going to bed with a really active mind where you're still kind of mulling over things for an hour or so before you actually fall asleep.
Yeah, that's a good one too. All right, the next thing that can really help is to celebrate the small wins. So when you tick something off your list, especially, if it's like a big thing like booking your photographer or confirming your hair and makeup or something like that, allow some time to actually appreciate and be grateful and kind of be proud of yourself for doing that one thing. Because it's very easy to fall into a trap of like, okay, this is done, now what's next? That's done, now what's next? What's next? What's next? But kind of slow down a little bit and just, appreciate what you've already done and what's already been ticked off.
Yeah. And if you can find a little way to just acknowledge that with, either a lunch or something fun with your partner, with the two of you, I feel like, you can really, it brings you back to the moment you're in and enjoying the present rather than forward thinking the entire time.
Yeah. Something that I really like that I see a lot of couples do these days is on like the date of their wedding each month, they'll go and have like a nice dinner, like a dinner date with their partner, and whether they're talking about something wedding related or not at all. But I think that's just like a really fun way to each month, kind of as a bit of a countdown, but also just to take that time to still be, I guess, romantic with your partner, because it can be such a stressful time. It's easy to kind of forget that it is a really fun and romantic time as well to share with your partner.
All right. So the next thing we have for you is letting go with perfectionism. Perfectionism? Yeah. Let go of perfectionism. I know with something as important as your wedding day, which I guess a lot of people kind of, it's always that thing that, you know, since you were a little kid, you just, you know, your wedding day. But I feel like the going into it with the mindset of everything has to be absolutely perfect, it's never going to be perfect because, yeah, it just, I don't know, it can still be perfect, or it's more likely to be perfect if you don't go into it with the mindset of it being perfect.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, it's one of those things where it's like when you're setting your expectations for something to a certain, not to a certain standard, but you set this idea of what something's going to be in your mind. And if it's not exactly that, you'll be disappointed regardless. When if you go into it with an open mind, it's like you're not clouding your vision of possibilities.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, with playing around with things, that's where you find your perfection. It,
yeah. That's like, I was just thinking, you know, that song, and it's like hoping for the best but expecting the worst or something like that. Don't expect the worst, but like hope for the best but kind of have no expectations about how it's actually gonna turn out in a way. And also I know that it's like, it's always really good to delegate certain tasks to people in your kind of crew in your circle. And I think this perfectionism thing really comes up with that, is that trust the people that you're delegating these tasks to do the task, because you need to get it off your plate for a reason. And if all you're doing is then like hounding that person and kind of micromanaging it, that's not actually gonna kind of alleviate any of the stress that you'll feel about it. So let them do their thing, and if they have issues with it, they will come to you. But I think,
and I know it can be hard again because it's something that it's obviously a very important event in your life. I can understand that it can be hard to then put the responsibility of certain things in the hands of someone else, but you just got to have faith and trust that it'll still work out and be okay.
Yeah, and like you said, Juliette, like there's every chance that no matter how much you try and perfect things, like the main thing with that is how you react to when things do go wrong, and to try and use kind of these small little things, especially like mental health switches, I guess, to see that as redirection and not like failure or something that's gone wrong. Just take it in your stride, especially when things happen on the day. I think it's so important to not let yourself get so stressed out on the day because like one tiny little thing is not going exactly to plan, because chances are like your guests won't notice. You'll probably laugh about it, you know, in a couple of weeks' time once the kind of stress and overwhelm of the day is over. And the last thing that you want is to look back on your day and all that you kind of have to remember is how you let this like one small thing ruin the whole experience. The next thing that you kind of need to do is set realistic deadlines. So when it comes to, like we were mentioning, booking things in certain time, or having certain times that you need things to be ticked off by, give yourself more than enough time to do those things. Don't be like conservative with it. If you think that you need a month to do something, give yourself like a month and a half just in case, because things can come up, things can go wrong. And, you know, it might even just be that you end up needing to go back and forth with a specific vendor, you know, 3 or 4 more times than you thought you would. And at least if you've given yourself that extra time, you don't have to kind of be stressed about it because your deadline's coming up in 2 days and you're still waiting on a response.
On something. And also be kind to yourself when it comes to these deadlines and stuff. And because most of the time it's not the end of the world if you do get to your set deadline and something's not done. Like, it's going to be fine. You know, these are just all, when people talk about, you know, when things should be done in like a wedding timeline, they're all just recommendations and generalized guidelines of, you know, when you should have stuff locked in. But like there's people who have literally planned weddings in like 6 weeks. So like you can figure it out and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't stress too much if, you know, you know, everywhere is saying that you need to have your venue booked in, you know, this many months before, and you don't. It's like, it's recommended to do that, but it's also fun.
Yeah. There's like an overwhelming amount of venues that there's going to be somewhere that you can find that is perfect for you, even if you're booking it later than that recommended time. This next one is a pretty big one, and it's to not try and replicate somebody else's wedding, especially if this is like coming from social media, and also Pinterest is like a really big one when it comes to wedding planning. We're all like, you know, pinning our favorite dresses and themes and all of this venues and everything on Pinterest. But it's like you're never going to be able to fully replicate that, and you also don't know what has actually gone into the planning of that wedding to make it turn out the way that it is. And even like you don't know how much of that photo is photoshopped, especially these days. Like I don't know if you saw, we had the Met Gala earlier this week, and there was
Katy Perry.
AI photos of Katy Perry, and even her mum believed that it was
real
her at the Met Gala. So like it's gotten to that point now where like you really cannot believe everything that you see online.
Yeah. And I think this also just comes back again to setting yourself up for success. And if you, again, are going into something with such strict guidelines of what you want it to be, you're basically setting yourself up for failure, because you're never going to get it 100% the same. And just because it's not that, it doesn't mean it's not going to be absolutely stunning and perfection. Like you can have your own version of something and it can still be absolutely amazing. So it's like, not going into something with a closed mind and keeping yourself open.
Yeah. And I think something else as well with this is when you're looking at like an influencer's wedding or something like that, and you're thinking, oh, that looks so cool, like I want to replicate that exactly. Before you start planning your wedding around that, think about like what you actually want, rather than just like you're wanting this because you've seen it somewhere online. Because like, do you actually want it, or is it just because like that influencer, for example, that you really like did it and all of her followers thinks that it looks cool, and so that's kind of influencing your interpretation of it and making you feel like that's what you want, when the reality is that if you'd never seen that photo, whatever it is, like you never would have thought to have that.
Do that,
Our
next point is to make sure you're leaning on those closest to you during this time. Again, it's really important to have that support system, and whether it's just your partner or even your friend, a parent, a sibling, just having someone you can really trust that you can go to, and you know they're going to be there for you and have a really positive impact helping you through it if you're struggling of some sort. Making sure this person is someone who has your best intentions in mind, and just someone who's there to listen.
Yeah, I think that's really important to have someone, and this doesn't necessarily mean like people to go to delegate things, but more so someone that you can go to talk about how you're feeling, because you don't want to be bottling up that you're feeling stressed about wedding planning and trying to put on a front of, you know, being so excited and all of this if you're actually feeling really burnt out and really stressed. So you need to have somebody that you can speak to about it and just kind of let it all out. And like you said, have them be like a positive influence to be able to guide you through it.
Yeah. And they're not going to stress you out more.
Probably don't go to that like one friend that you know is going to say, oh yeah, well I really don't like that.
Glass half empty. Because like literally just letting it out and talking, even if it's just talking smack for an hour. Like it can just make you feel so much better. Just letting it out.
Also,
have a good rant. You just need it sometimes.
Also, if you can have this not be your partner, have it not be your partner, because sometimes you might want to vent about your partner and say, oh my goodness, like they're not helping with anything. I asked them to do this and they didn't do
something.
Okay, and now the last point that we have is learning to say no. I know that this can be really hard for some people, and you know, a lot of us can be kind of people pleasing and want to just make everyone else happy. But on your wedding day, it is about you and your partner. And so you need to kind of be able to set those boundaries and say no to the people that are like suggesting things that don't align with your vision for the day.
And you really don't want to let anyone pressure you into doing anything. Just like, because I know a big one can be parents in this situation, and it can be very hard to say no to a parent, especially if they're contributing to the wedding in a monetary sense. But yeah, it's like, again, like you were saying, it's your day and you shouldn't have to bend over backwards for what somebody else wants. They had their time. They had, or maybe they haven't, but it doesn't matter. It's your day.
Don't let people if they say, oh, well, I didn't do that at my wedding and I wish I did, so you should have to do it at your wedding. Like, no. If you don't want to do it at your wedding,
don't do
it.
You
don't have to.
No.
I saw, this is a little bit off topic, but I saw this video the other day of, how generally after you get married and then you walk back down the aisle and people have confetti and stuff. And it was, I think a videographer had the footage and he was saying there's always one person, and it was the auntie or something put the confetti down the bride's dress. And apparently it's common that someone always dumps it on on their heads rather than throwing it up and making it pretty. And the bride asked her, oh, why did you do that? And this was it was her auntie. So would have been, 25, 30 years older than her. And she was like, oh, well, someone did it at my wedding. So I had to, pay back kind of thing. And it's that is not my problem.
That's the math ain't mathing. What?
But a little bit off topic, but that kind of thing where if someone's oh, well, I have this happened at my wedding and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's your day. Not theirs to redo.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Save the Date podcast. We hope you learned something new, and if you're currently planning your wedding, congratulations, good luck, and have fun.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you follow or subscribe and leave us a review wherever it is you're listening.
Make sure to come and connect with us on our socials at the Save the Date podcast and join our Facebook group, the Save the Date community. We hope you have a wonderful day or night, and we'll be back with another episode next week. Bye.
Bye.